It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of gray, unremarkable day in Chicago where the wind off the river feels like it's whispering secrets through the windows. I was sitting in my apartment, the one I'd made my own after decades of chasing stories and raising a family. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, forgotten on the table next to a framed photo of my daughter, Charlotte, from her high school graduation. Her smile in that picture, bright, unguarded, felt like a relic now. My name is Beatrice Langley, and at 62, I thought I'd seen every kind of betrayal a life could hold. I was wrong. My phone buzzed, a sharp little jolt that snapped me out of my thoughts. It was the family group chat, the one that used to hum with recipes, birthday plans, and silly photos of my grandkids. I expected a picture from last weekend's picnic, maybe Charlotte showing off her latest baking experiment. Instead, it was her name on the screen, and the words hit like a slap. "Mom, we've talked. We think it's best if we cut contact. Please don't come to family gatherings anymore. This is what's right for everyone." I blinked at the screen, my thumb hovering, waiting for my brain to catch up. Surely this was a mistake, a typo, a cruel joke. But then I saw Theodore, my son-in-law, reply with a single OK emoji, cold as a closed door. My granddaughter Hazel didn't respond at all, just silence. I read it again, then again, my eyes burning like they were trying to rewrite the words into something less sharp. No mistake. My family, the one I'd poured my life into, had just erased me with a text. I set the phone down, my hands steady but my heart racing like it was trying to outrun the truth. I stood and walked to the window, the Chicago skyline sprawling below, all steel and glass and indifference. My pearl necklace, the one I'd worn since my wedding day, felt heavy against my collarbone, like it was anchoring me to a life that no longer existed. I thought of the times I'd hosted Sunday dinners, the laughter around my table, the way Charlotte used to curl up next to me as a girl, begging for one more story. Now, that table felt like a ghost, its chairs empty forever. I scrolled back through the group chat, searching for clues I'd missed. There they were, plain as day. Birthday parties I hadn't been invited to. Vacations I only saw on Instagram. My own mother's antique clock in the background of Charlotte's latest post, ticking away in a house I wasn't welcome in. They'd been carving me out of their lives for months, maybe years, and I'd been too stubborn to see it. That's when something shifted inside me. Not just pain, though that was there, raw and jagged. It was something harder, sharper, like the edge of a blade I hadn't known I was carrying. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I wasn't just a grandmother. I was Beatrice Langley, the woman who'd spent 30 years uncovering truths others wanted buried. If they thought they could erase me with a text, they were about to learn how wrong they were. I picked up my phone again, typed 2 words, noted, and then I began. That text from Charlotte sat in my gut like a stone, heavy and cold. I spent the rest of that Tuesday pacing my apartment, the Chicago River outside my window glinting like it was mocking my stillness. I'd been a journalist for 3 decades, chasing leads through smoky bars and dusty archives, exposing truths that powerful people wanted hidden. Yet here I was, blindsided by my own daughter. How had I missed this? How had I let my family, my blood, build a wall around me while I was busy brewing coffee and watering my plants? I opened the group chat again, scrolling back months, then years. The signs were there, stitched into the silence: missed invitations, 2 Hazel's school plays, photos of a family trip to Lake Michigan, my absence unnoticed, a Thanksgiving post from Charlotte, her table set with my mother's crystal glasses, the ones I'd left in her care. They weren't just cutting me out, they were using my legacy to dress up their lives without me. I felt something crack inside, not like glass breaking, but like fabric tearing, slow and deliberate. I took a screenshot of Charlotte's text, not for sentiment, but for evidence. Old habits die hard. As a journalist, I'd learned the first rule of surviving betrayal: collect the proof while they think you're still reeling. I opened my laptop, my fingers moving before my mind caught up, pulling up bank statements for the Langley Foundation, the charity I'd founded to fund scholarships for kids in Chicago's South Side. I hadn't checked the accounts in months, trusting Charlotte and Theodore to manage them. That was my mistake. The numbers didn't lie. Withdrawals I hadn't authorized, payments to consultants I'd never heard of, a $50,000 transfer labeled event planning that somehow funded a trip to Santorini. Judging by Charlotte's Instagram posts of whitewashed villas and turquoise seas, my charity, my life's work, was being bled dry to bankroll their vacations, and Theodore, with his polished suits and salesman's grin, was at the center of it. I closed my laptop, my hands steady now, the fog of shock giving way to clarity. I needed help, someone who could match my fire with precision. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years, one I'd kept tucked in my memory like a hidden ace. Rosemary Vaughn, a financial lawyer who'd been my source on a corruption story back in the 90s, picked up on the third ring. Her voice was all business, sharp as a Chicago winter. "Beatrice Langley, I thought you'd retired." "I thought so too," I said, twisting the pearl necklace around my finger. "But I need you. They're stealing from me, Rosemary. My family." There was a pause, then a low whistle. "Give me 24 hours to clear my desk. Meet me at the cafe in Lincoln Park tomorrow." I hung up, catching my reflection in the window. My eyes looked different, less like a mother, more like the reporter who'd once stared down a crooked mare without blinking. That night, my phone buzzed again, not Charlotte or Theodore, but Felix, my 19-year-old grandson. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, like he was afraid of being overheard. "Grandma, are you okay? I saw the group chat. I don't agree with them." My heart softened. Just a little. Felix, with his messy curls and old soul eyes, had always been my tether to the family, the one who still called to ask about my day. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied, my voice softer than I meant. "But tell me, what's going on over there?" He hesitated, then dropped a bomb. "It's Theodore. He's been talking about you for months, saying you're forgetful, a burden. He told Mom it's better this way, that you're not yourself anymore." The words landed like a punch. Theodore wasn't just stealing my money. He was rewriting my story, painting me as a frail old woman to justify their betrayal. I thanked Felix, told him to keep this between us, and hung up. The apartment felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with purpose. I pulled out a notebook, one I'd used for my last big story, and started writing everything they thought I wouldn't see. By morning, I was ready. Theodore wanted to play puppet master, pulling Charlotte's strings and cutting me out. Fine. I'd been unraveling lies since before he was born. I slipped on my old glasses, the ones I wore when I was chasing leads, and headed to meet Rosemary. The game was on, and I wasn't just playing to survive. I was playing to win. The cafe in Lincoln Park smelled of espresso and rain-damp coats, the kind of place where secrets get spilled over half-empty cups. Rosemary Vaughn sat across from me, her tailored blazer as sharp as her mind. I slid a folder across the table, thick with bank statements, screenshots, and notes I'd scribbled at 3 a.m. "This is what they've done," I said, my voice low but steady. "The Langley Foundation. Theodore's been draining it like a leech." Rosemary flipped through the pages, her eyes narrowing. $8.7 million, she said, almost to herself. "Fake invoices, shell companies, a condo in Miami, listed as charitable outreach." Bold. She looked up, her gaze like a blade. "You sure you want to go after them, Beatrice? This gets messy." I twisted the pearl necklace at my throat, the one I'd worn through every storm of my life. "Messy's fine. I'm done being tidy." She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Then we start with a forensic audit. I'll draft a clause to freeze their accounts and force a management review. But you'll need to sell your stake in the foundation to trigger it." "Sell my stake?" The words stung, like signing away a piece of my soul. The Langley Foundation was my legacy, built from years of late nights and hard-won scoops. But if it meant exposing Theodore, I'd do it. "Draw it up," I told her. "I want every dollar accounted for." The next week was a blur of documents and quiet rage. Rosemary's team dug into the foundation's finances, unearthing a trail of greed so blatant it was almost insulting. A $90,000 consulting fee to a company that didn't exist, a wellness grant that paid for Theodore's yacht rental in the Caribbean, and Charlotte, my Charlotte, had signed off on half of it. I kept seeing her face as a girl, all pigtails and trust, and I wondered where that child had gone. My phone kept buzzing. Theodore, then Charlotte, then Theodore again. I let the calls go to voicemail, each one a note in a symphony of panic. Yesterday, I was their inconvenience. Today, I was their reckoning. I typed one reply to the group chat. Message received. Enjoy your last gala. Then I left the chat, my finger hovering over the button like I was cutting a thread. Some bridges you burn, others you douse in gasoline and walk away, the flames lighting up the sky behind you. I needed to go bigger, Rosemary agreed. They're banking on your silence, she said over coffee, her voice calm but lethal. So let's make some noise. I'd spent my career telling other people's stories, but never my own. That changed one rainy evening in my apartment. I set up my old webcam, the one I'd used for virtual interviews, and sat in front of my bookshelf, its shelves heavy with books I'd loved and lives I'd lived. I smoothed my blouse, took a breath, and hit record. My name is Beatrice Langley, I began, my voice shaking just enough to feel real. I'm 62 years old, and my family decided I was disposable. They took my money, my legacy, and my place at their table. But I'm still here, and I'm done being quiet. I told it all, the text, the stolen funds, the way they'd painted me as a fading old woman. I uploaded it to YouTube, expecting a few views from old colleagues. By morning, it had 1 million. By evening, 2 million. Strangers left comments. You're my hero. This happened to my mom. Keep fighting, Beatrice. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It was theirs. Theodore and Charlotte fought back. Of course, a glossy magazine ran a piece, no doubt paid for by Theodore's PR team, calling me emotionally unstable and resentful of the family's success. I read it at my hairdresser's, sipping tea while my stylist, Mara, peeked over my shoulder. They're scared of you, she said, snipping away. Good, I replied. They should be. I decided to face them in person. The Langley Foundation's annual gala was that weekend, held at a swanky venue overlooking the Chicago River. I wasn't invited, naturally, but I went anyway. I wore a silk emerald coat, my pearl necklace gleaming like armor, and walked through the glass doors like I owned the place. The room went quiet, forks pausing midair. Charlotte dropped her wineglass, the shatter echoing like a gunshot. Theodore's face drained of color, his charm crumbling. Beatrice, he stammered. This isn't relax, I said, sliding into a chair beside them, my voice smooth as ice. I'm just here for the Knops, though. I hear the audit's going to be quite the show. Charlotte's eyes widened, her hands trembling. Audit, she whispered. I smiled, just a little. Oh, didn't Theodore mention? Rosemary Vaughn's combing through every penny, especially the ones meant for kids' scholarships. Theodore tried to laugh it off, but it came out strangled. I leaned in, my voice low. You wanted me gone. Congratulations. You made me dangerous. I stood, leaving them to their whispers and wine stains, and walked out into the night. The river glittered below, reflecting a city that never sleeps on its secrets. Rosemary called the next morning. The audit's done, she said. It's worse than we thought. Offshore accounts, fake vendors, even a beach house in the Bahamas. We're ready to file charges: fraud, embezzlement, the works. I stood at my window, watching a barge drift down the river. Do it, I said. Let's take it to court. The courthouse loomed like a stone giant, its halls echoing with the weight of truth and lies. Rosemary had built a case so airtight it could have sunk a ship. Emails, bank records, even a memo from Theodore suggesting they ease Beatrice out of the foundation's decisions. I sat in the gallery, my pearl necklace catching the light, as the prosecution laid it all bare. $8.7 million, stolen from kids who needed it most. My heart ached, not just for me, but for every dream those dollars could have funded. Charlotte wouldn't meet my eyes. Theodore kept adjusting his tie, like it could choke the guilt away, but the evidence was relentless, a paper trail that screamed louder than their denials. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I was fighting for every person who'd ever been told they were too old, too frail, to matter. And as the judge called for a recess, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of their regret. The courtroom smelled of old wood and nervous sweat, the kind of place where truths come to light or get buried deeper. I sat in the gallery, my pearl necklace cool against my skin, watching the prosecution dismantle Theodore's carefully crafted facade. Rosemary Vaughn was a force, her voice slicing through the room as she presented bank records, fake invoices, and emails that proved Theodore had siphoned $8.7 million from the Langley Foundation. Each piece of evidence felt like a brick pulled from the wall he'd built around my life. But it was Charlotte's silence that cut the deepest. My daughter, my heart, sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the floor, like she was trying to disappear. Wanted to hate her. I wanted to let the pain of her text, "We're done with you," turn my love to ash. But every time I looked at her, I saw the girl who'd clung to my hand at her first school play, the one who'd cried when I told her stories weren't just words, but promises. How had we gotten here? How had my daughter become a stranger? Then, Felix took the stand. My grandson, all 19 years of him, with his lanky frame and eyes that carried too much weight for his age. He looked at me, just for a second, and I saw the boy who'd spent summers asking me to teach him how to write a lead paragraph. The prosecutor asked, "Felix, can you tell us what you overheard about your grandmother's role in the family?" His voice was steady, but his hands shook. Theodore said she was losing it, that she couldn't handle the foundation anymore. He told Mom Charlotte it was for her own good to cut her out. He said Grandma was a liability. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I felt my breath catch, not from anger, but from something heavier. Felix kept going. He'd talk to Mom late at night, when they thought I wasn't listening. He'd say things like, "She's too old to fight back," or "We're protecting her by taking control." I didn't believe him. "Grandma's sharper than anyone I know." The judge raised an eyebrow, and I swear I saw a flicker of a smile. My heart swelled, but it broke too. Theodore hadn't just stolen from me. He'd turned my daughter against me, twisting her love into a weapon. That night, I couldn't sleep. The Chicago skyline glittered outside my window, all sharp edges and cold light. I kept replaying Felix's words, wondering if Charlotte had believed Theodore's lies or if she'd just been too tired to fight him. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I hadn't seen in months. "Charlotte, Mom, can we talk? Alone, please." I stared at it, my thumb hovering, the weight of 1,000 unspoken words pressing down. I replied, "Lincoln Park Caf, Ba A.M." The cafe was quiet when I arrived, the morning light soft through the windows. Charlotte was already there, sitting in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a mug like it was the only thing keeping her steady. She looked smaller than I remembered, her eyes red, her usual polish frayed at the edges. "Mom," she started, her voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. "Didn't know what?" I asked, keeping my tone even, though my heart was pounding. She looked away, tears spilling. "Theodore said you were forgetting things, that you were unstable. He said the foundation was failing because of you." I believed him. I thought I was protecting you. Her words hung there, fragile and raw. But in court, when I saw the numbers, the emails, "Mom, he lied to me, to all of us." I wanted to reach across the table, to hold her like I did when she was small, but I stayed still, my hands folded around my own mug. "Why didn't you ask me, Charlotte? Why didn't you trust me?" she sobbed, a sound that tore at me. I was scared. He made it sound so real. I thought I was doing the right thing. Then, she slid a USB drive across the table. "This has emails, recordings, everything he tried to hide from you and Rosemary. I found them on his laptop last night. I'm so sorry, Mom." I took the drive, my fingers brushing hers, and for the first time in years, I felt her warmth. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a crack in the wall between us. Rosemary called it a bombshell. The USB held proof of Theodore's solo schemes, bank transfers he'd hidden from Charlotte, fake contracts he'd forged in her name. It was enough to shift the case. In court, Charlotte took the stand, her voice trembling but clear, detailing how Theodore had manipulated her, feeding her lies about my health to justify his theft. The jury didn't just listen. They leaned in, their faces softening as she spoke. Theodore's lawyer tried to spin it, but the evidence was a tidal wave. The verdict came fast. Theodore was found guilty. Fraud, embezzlement, financial abuse, 7 years in prison, with his polished charm locked away where it couldn't hurt anyone else. Charlotte and I didn't hug outside the courtroom. We didn't need to. She looked at me, her eyes full of a quiet regret, and I nodded. "We'll talk," I said. "Not today, but soon." I walked home alone, the Chicago River shimmering under a late afternoon sun. Forgiveness wasn't a gift I could give, yet it was a road, long and uneven, and we'd only taken the first step. But for the first time, I saw Charlotte as a victim, too, caught in Theodore's web, and that truth, painful as it was, felt like a weight lifting. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I was fighting for her, for Felix, for every person who'd been lied to by someone they loved. As I stepped into my apartment, the pearl necklace caught the light, a reminder of who I'd been and who I was becoming. Theodore thought he'd buried me. Instead, he'd given me a reason to rise. The courtroom victory didn't feel like a triumph. It felt like standing in the wreckage of a house I'd built with my own hands, picking up the pieces to see what could be salvaged. Theodore was gone, locked away for 7 years, his lies exposed like cracks in a dam. Charlotte was trying to rebuild a bridge between us, her apologies fragile but sincere. But as I walked back to my Chicago apartment, the river reflecting a sky bruised with clouds, I realized winning wasn't enough. I didn't want to just survive. I wanted to live again. Felix was my anchor. My grandson, with his quiet strength and eyes that saw more than he said, came over the next morning with a bag of bagels from the corner deli. He plopped down on my couch, his sneakers untied, and pulled out his laptop. "Grandma," he said, his voice half excited, half nervous, "I've been thinking, what if we turned this into something bigger? Not just your story, but a way to help others like you." I raised an eyebrow, sipping my tea. "What's in that head of yours, kid?" He grinned, the kind of grin that reminded me of myself at 19, full of fire and possibility. "A foundation. Not like the Langley Foundation, but something new. A place for people who've been pushed out, lied to, erased by their families. We could call it Langley Haven." Langley Haven. The name hit me like a warm breeze, soft but powerful. I saw it as a safe space for people like me, people who'd been told they were too old to matter. Felix and I spent the day sketching out ideas, our voices overlapping as we imagined legal aid, financial counseling, a hotline for those trapped in silence. By sunset, my dining table was covered in notes, coffee stains, and hope. We launched Langley Haven 3 months later, in a small office on Chicago's west side. No fancy chandeliers, just mismatched chairs and a coffee maker that hummed like it was part of the team. Felix designed the website, simple but clear, with a mission statement I wrote myself. No one should be silenced by the people they love. The first call came within hours. A woman in Indiana, her voice trembling, as she described her son selling her house behind her back. I listened, my heart aching, and promised we'd help, and we did. Our pro bono lawyer filed a motion to freeze her assets, and within weeks, she had her home back. The letters started pouring in. A retired teacher from Missouri, thanking me for giving her the courage to demand her bank statements. A widower in Ohio, whose daughter had drained his savings for her business. Each one felt like a mirror, reflecting my own pain back at me, but also my strength. I read them late at night, my pearl necklace resting on the table beside me, a reminder of the life I'd fought to reclaim. But not everyone was happy. Hazel, my granddaughter, surfaced with a lawyer and a grudge. She filed a petition to challenge my will, claiming I'd been unduly influenced by Felix to redirect my estate to Langley Haven. The audacity stung. Hazel, who hadn't called me in years, who'd stayed silent when Charlotte's text cut me out, now wanted a piece of what I'd built. The hearing was quick, held in a cramped Chicago courthouse with creaky benches and a judge who looked like she'd seen every trick in the book. I stood before her, my voice steady. "Your Honor, my granddaughter hasn't spoken to me since she was 16. Not a card, not a call, not a whisper, until she learned I'd chosen a new legacy. I'm 62, not confused. I built Langley Haven because I know what it's like to be erased." Felix didn't push me into this. He reminded me who I am. Rosemary handed over medical records proving my clarity, and the judge dismissed the case with a nod. "Your will stands, Ms. Langley." Hazel didn't look at me as she left. I didn't need her to. Walking out of that courthouse, Felix at my side, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I hadn't known I was carrying. Langley Haven grew faster than I'd dreamed. We opened a second office, started a podcast called Voices Unsilenced, where I interviewed survivors, women in their 70s who'd escaped manipulative children, men who'd been coerced into signing away their homes. One episode, with a 90-year-old librarian who'd lost her savings to a nephew, got thousands of downloads. "Never stop asking questions," she told me, her voice crackling with defiance. "Family doesn't get a free pass." The world started noticing. News outlets called, not for scandal, but for stories of hope. A woman in Texas sent a letter, her handwriting shaky but sure. "You helped me get my farm back from my son. I thought I was done. You showed me I wasn't." I read it to Felix, my voice catching. "This," I said, "this is why we keep going." That night, I stood on my balcony, the Chicago River shimmering below like a ribbon of stars. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and city life. I thought of Charlotte, of the fragile steps we were taking toward each other. I thought of Theodore, locked away, his lies no match for the truth. And I thought of myself, not as the woman who'd been betrayed, but as the woman who'd built something new. Langley Haven wasn't just a foundation. It was proof that pain could become purpose, that silence could become a shout. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. And as the city hummed below, I knew I was just getting started. Some evenings, when the Chicago skyline glows like a promise against the dusk, I step onto my balcony with a cup of chamomile tea, the steam curling like a quiet prayer. The river below catches the last light, its surface a mirror for the city's restless heart. I'm Beatrice Langley, 62 years old, and I've learned that freedom isn't a moment, it's a choice you make every day. After everything, the text from Charlotte, Theodora's lies, the courtroom battles, I thought winning would feel like a finish line. It doesn't. It feels like a beginning. I think about that text often, the one that tried to erase me. We're done with you. It stings less now, not because the wound is gone, but because I've built something stronger in its place. Langley Haven, with its small office and big dreams, is my answer to that pain. It's where I read letters from strangers who feel like kin, where I listened to voices that were silenced too long. It's where I found Felix, my grandson, not just as family, but as a partner in this fight. And it's where I'm learning to see Charlotte again, not as the daughter who hurt me, but as someone who was lost in her own way, reaching for me now across a fragile bridge. Forgiveness isn't easy. It's not a warm hug or a clean slate. It's a slow dance, one step forward, two steps back, with Charlotte's apologies still echoing in my mind. I don't know if we'll ever sit at the same table again, laughing like we used to, but I know I don't need to hate her to love myself. That's the freedom I've found, not in forgetting, but in choosing what I carry forward. My pearl necklace, the one I've worn since my wedding day, doesn't feel heavy anymore. It's a reminder that I've weathered storms and come out shining. I've learned something else, something I wish I'd known sooner. Stories are power. Mine started as a whisper, a shaky video uploaded in a moment of defiance. Now it's a shout, carried by thousands who've heard it and seen themselves in it. If you're listening, if you've ever felt invisible, like your voice doesn't matter, I see you. You're not too old, not too broken, to start again. You can pick up a pen, open a door, build something new. Langley Haven's number is out there. Call us. Share your story. Let it be the spark that lights your fire. The lesson I hold closest is this: life doesn't end when someone tries to write you out of it. You get to write your own ending, no matter how many years you've lived or how many scars you carry. Every morning, I wake up and choose to be Beatrice Langley, not the woman they tried to erase, but the one who built a haven from her pain. You can do that too. You're never too old to rewrite your story, to make it sing with truth. So go on, pick up your pen. The page is waiting.